And we're back with the show. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast once again. And I'll tell you what, we have a special guest on today. We are just truly excited as anybody who wishes to come on our program. We're just truly honored in having them do so. And we have got a tremendous guest who has their own outstanding podcast. It is, I love this. We played their ad the other day in one of our podcasts. It is the voice from the underground. I love that. That was just so cool. So it is Jasen Mummert. I just thank you so much for being part of the show today. But Jasen, I wanted to get more info from you on your great show, which now appears on Spreaker, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Is there any more outlets? That's all I got so far.
We're pretty much everywhere, to be honest with you. And I appreciate the nice intro, Gerald. I think that you've probably given us a little bit too much credit for being better than we actually are. But yeah, Voice from the Underground. You can follow us on Twitter at VFU Podcast. But we are pretty much everywhere, I think, except Spotify. Spotify is the only one that we're not on at the moment. We're on Google Play, we're on iTunes, we're on Spreaker, we're on iHeartRadio. So we're getting the word out there as quickly as we can. This is we got 8 episodes in the bag at the moment.
Oh, that's awesome indeed. And again, it is such a pleasure having you on the show to talk all things pop culture and just as you know, there is so much going on right now, just floating around in the world of pop culture.
It's a podcaster's dream.
Exactly, indeed. It's Last Jedi flying around, net neutrality being fought for, and wouldn't you know, the house the mouse built just happened to go ahead and buy some things from Fox that I'll take some of that. I'll take some of that, and I'll take some of that. And here's $52.4 billion for you. How about that, Mr. Fox? So I ask you, Jasen, there are some great components and also some things that people are concerned about when it comes to this acquisition of a lot of the Fox media outlet assets. What of you, first off, is of a great joy that Disney now has when it bought off a lot of these Fox properties?
Well, it's funny that you bring up Mickey. I think that the figuratively and literally Scrooge McDuck must be a real thing, because that's an insane amount of money when you think about it. I mean, that's more than the GDP of most of the countries in this world. And you know, with Disney, it seems to me that they spent a lot of this money. And I think, especially to most of us out there who are comic fans and fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that they did a lot of this just to acquire the X-Men property. But the crazy thing is just everything else that they've got and all of the questions that there are now as to what they're going to do with a lot of this stuff. You know, X-Men's obviously exciting for most people. I will say that I am not a terribly huge fan of the idea of the X-Men coming into the MCU. And I know I'm in the very, very small minority here. I don't have a problem with characters like Wolverine and possibly Cyclops, Storm. But just the idea of a mutant, as a former comic book reader and complete nerd my whole life, you know, the idea of a mutant for me was always just a little bit too much of a cop-out for Marvel, where, you know, they were just basically able to come up with any character they wanted with any type of powers that they wanted at any time, just by saying, oh, well, he's a mutant and this is what his power is. So, you know, for me, the creative license there isn't really too spectacular. But obviously some of the core characters definitely, I think, would have a great place in the MCU. The thing that I'm kind of more thinking about, I guess, is the easy way to say it is what I don't know is what they're going to do with a lot of these other properties. I mean, they're getting Avatar, which is massive. They're getting. I'm not really sure what's going on with The Simpsons. If I haven't seen anything concrete to say that The Simpsons was or was not in there. Did you see anything about that?
Yes, The Simpsons are now part of the Disney franchise. In fact, I think I saw lots of memes in regards to Homer Simpson choking out Mickey Mouse, similar that he does to Bart, and Bart saying, "Welcome to the family, man." I want to ask you as well, when it comes to this merger, because yeah, I mean, you could say yes. How much it took to Disney to want to bring back the X-Men and Fantastic Four back into Marvel, but you don't pay $52.4 billion just to get that in. I'm sure that was one of the inquiries. Like, hey, do you want to sell off your X-Men and Fantastic Four properties back to home to us? And they'll say, well, we're looking to sell a lot more. You don't pay $52.4 billion just for those properties. So it with the Simpsons and the Aliens and the also as
Planet
well
of the
Ice
Apes.
Age. Pardon?
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, as far as distribution rights there, Kung Fu Panda distribution rights as well. Just so many other different things, that are in play here. It obviously $52.4 billion. I keep coming down to that number because you don't just buy those properties and those characters just to get them back in the Marvel that much money. There has to be something a lot more that Disney plans to do in order to recoup and obviously gain a profit from this deal.
Oh, well, there's no question about it. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just going to make money on its own. I mean, if you put together an X-Men movie where they're going to go up to bat against the Avengers, you're going to make $2 billion on that movie without breaking a sweat. And that, there's, especially once you figure that the Avengers movies make about $1 billion a piece anyway. The amount of money that they make on these films is just absurd. Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four, now, from my understanding, is that particular piece is not completely done, because from what I understand, there is another hand in the cookie jar. I forget the name of the movie company.
Yes,
But
we did mention last week they do own a percentage of the rights to it, but it was distinctly mentioned in the press release by Disney, the Fantastic Four, about bringing them home to Marvel. So I believe that they have plans. I know Rob and I discussed it. The other individual company that's out there that owns a piece of that, they don't have distribution rights. So they can make all the
correct.
Fantastic Four films that they want and Fantastic Four film projects that they would ever desire to do, but it would never see the light of day if Disney doesn't want them to. So in that case, it's kind of a little bit of a hardball thing going on there. So
Yeah, I guess it depends if you're talking about the Scrooge McDuck before or after he was visited by the three ghosts on Christmas night. So
exactly. So eventually, that other entity will probably have to fold and either sell off the rights to Disney or just cooperate in some form or fashion with whatever Disney wants to do, because they'll never be able to use that property again in any form, which is,
right.
Obviously Disney has all the leg up on that point. So with all that said and done and the dust settling and whatnot, my friend director Rob McCallum and I discussed at length a time frame for when Disney could see true fruition for this thing to prosper out. And we've talked about a live streaming format for Disney, because they're obviously breaking away from Netflix to create their own live entity. But they purchased a even bigger percentage of Hulu, so they now
60%.
Yes, so now they own a majority of Hulu, so they can actually start that streaming entity there. Do you think it's going to take 10, 20 years before we finally see the full fruits of the labor from this entire thing? Or do you think that at some point in time that it's going to look like that maybe the $52.4 billion was too much to spend?
Well, $52.4 billion, you can always make an argument that that's too much to spend. I mean, that's an amount of money that, I mean, you can't even fathom it. You think about the fact that a billion seconds ago, it was what, 1950 something. That just puts context onto the number of billion, and they just paid 52 of those. So who knows? I do know that Disney definitely didn't do this with the idea of getting all this money back over the course of 30, 40 years. I'm going to take a wild guess that Scrooge wants to get all this money back as soon as possible. So I would be in the camp that would say, hey, they're going to start putting these properties together. And I think Hulu is probably a big piece of it. You hit it right on the nose, because they've already said they're coming out with their own streaming service. They now have all of Fox property as well as all of their own to put into this streaming service and take. Now, I do wonder what's going to happen with like Daredevil. I do wonder what's going to happen with the Defenders because of the Netflix commitment there, and whether or not they'll move from Netflix to Hulu, or whether or not they'll just kind of fade away. Now, Defenders kind of was terrible. Iron Fist was kind of terrible, but the rest of those series have been relatively good. So I do hope.
And I know Punisher just got a new lease of life for another season on Netflix.
And also you have to keep in mind that Fox has 2 and possibly 3 DC property. It has Gotham right now, which is on Fox. So what is Disney going to do with Gotham? Are they just going to basically pull it over to the guillotine and say, "Here, take this, Bruce Wayne"? What are they going to do with Lucifer? What are they going to do with iZombie? iZombie may have been canceled already, but they do have those few DC properties there. I'll tell you what, Gerald. I don't know what you think. If you were Warner Brothers, wouldn't you have just wanted to pull a coup here and just said, "Here, we'll pay you $53 billion and take X-Men from Disney and basically say, here, we can't beat you with Justice League. We know that because Batman versus Superman was just so bad that nobody will go see it. So we're just going to take all of your properties from you." How crazy would that have been?
That would have been pretty nice indeed. It would have been nice to hold the X-Men over the fire and say, nah, 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 but I don't think they just, hold on a second. I'm sorry. I don't think they had the cash on hand to do so. I think Disney is one of the few companies. I mean, look at the major entities that were negotiating with Fox on this. You had Comcast and negotiating with them. You also had Sony. You also had Warner Brothers at a time was also negotiating as well. Universal. A lot of the properties were there. The only property the 2 properties I was kind of just sad not seeing them putting their foot into it was Apple and also as well Amazon, because I think those 2 entities were the only 2 that really could actually outperform with cashola right there and give them a higher bid than what Disney was offering.
Yeah, Apple, they didn't even cross my mind. Amazon did cross my mind. They have, to be honest with you, I have Amazon Prime. So I guess I have that extra streaming service. I don't really do Amazon for the streaming service. I do it more for, the free shipping on the items that I purchase from Amazon. But all of the content that I've seen on Amazon has been, at least let's say, not something that would pique my interest. I can't say that I've ever watched a show on Amazon Prime. So I would think that they would have been very eager to pick up some content that folks would like to watch, because maybe I'm just on the outside looking in, but nothing that Amazon has on their Prime membership to me looks all that terribly appealing. I don't know about you.
I feel somewhat the same way. There's some good indie stuff. There's some smaller projects. I did watch The Big Sick on Amazon Prime the other day, which was a solid movie. I'm not as high on it as other people. I know a lot of people putting in their top 10 of the year. I'm not as high in that the film on that. There's also with Apple. Apple has just started buying some interest into some pilots for TV shows. So I know they're just starting to dip. They're just starting to dip their toe in the water when it comes to television production and going forward. So I know that they've talked about media services of their own. So that's why I'm interested. That's why I thought it was kind of surprising not to see their names more heavily involved with what was going on with these Sonys and like I said, Warner Brothers, Universals, the Hollywood entities that we already know. It just seems like it was a given that they probably didn't have enough cash on hand to purchase what Disney wanted to do if Disney sets their mind to it. And there's really like only 2 entities in town at this point in time that can actually compete with what Disney's all about. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, they're the New York Yankees of media.
Pretty much right now, yeah. Unless Apple and Amazon say otherwise, because at this point, they're the only 2, I think, other ball games in town that actually can compete dollar for dollar. Universal can put out a billion-dollar movie franchise, but overall, they are not. Excuse me again. They are not the they have a lot of failures along with a lot of successes from the Jurassic World
Right.
sagas and things of that nature. But it's just Amazon and Apple not being a major part of this bidding process was kind of surprising.
Yeah, like I said, Gerald, I wasn't really I didn't even know anything that you had just mentioned about Apple. I had no idea that they were looking to cross into that uh, into the media platform. But Amazon, I will definitely share that thought with you that I would have thought they would have been very, very heavily engaged with this because again, I think that they really need content. If I scroll through my Amazon feed, there's not a ton there, and I would, but then again, I said, Disney's like the Yankees, right? I don't think they were going to be outbid on this. I think that they looked at this and they said, here, we're just going to go so far and astronomically beyond what anybody else will be able to offer you and just give Rupert Murdoch this payday that uh, God knows he's going to probably put all of it into Fox News and just make the rest of the world an even crazier place than it already is. But this is just a situation where I think Disney decided, you know what, we're the big kid on the block. We already own pretty much everything. People don't even realize, some people don't even realize that Disney owns like ESPN and ABC, and and now they add all of this other content to it. They really own more or less, they own two of the four major networks. Because Fox, for the last 30 years has been trying to get themselves to be that fourth network, and the Simpsons was a big part of that. I remember when I was a kid, growing up in Chicago, we had Fox WFLD channel 32, and they were, a UHF station that kind of got, crummier reception. And then over the years, they started to get better and better and better, and they made it to where they wanted to be. And now Disney's got basically half of your media. So, people are worried about net neutrality, and which I know is something you and I are both very, very concerned about. But now you do have a little bit of a fear here because Disney is, this is a monopoly now of sorts. I mean, there's a lot of good that comes with this, but there's also a lot that we may not be thinking about right now because we have such tunnel vision on Wolverine joining the Avengers that we may not be completely happy with everything when we look back on this 5 years from now.
And they also acquired really solid networks that boost their cable performance in
FX,
FXM, and FXX. FX being the prize jewel of that part of it, which, according to many people, including myself, is one of the best cable networks that are out there. So definitely that's something to think about.
Oh, that means they own Sons of Anarchy. Think of that. Disney, Mickey Mouse owns Sons of Anarchy. Who would have ever thought?
Who would have ever thought, indeed. Well, Jason, it's just been great having you on here. But before you head on out, I want to ask you real quick, why is the Voice from the Underground one of the leading podcasts out there today in all sorts of things that you guys cover? Just want to hear your thoughts on why it's such a great podcast and why people need to listen to it.
Well, I appreciate that. We're just three guys. But both of my co-hosts are pretty amazing guys. And we have a fourth co-host that's going to be joining us soon. But we talk a lot about race. We talk a lot about social issues. We talk a lot about current events. And really what we are there to do is to try to get a little bit of conversation about fun stuff like comic books and a little bit of fun, conversation about sports, that sort of thing, things that, make us smile, but also sort of get down to the nitty gritty issues, the things that you see on the news that sort of make your stomach turn a little bit, or the fact that we have all these mass shootings in this country, and the fact that we have, a lot of divisiveness coming from, in our opinion, the White House. But, you have folks who, if you go on Twitter and you say something about, oh, I support this for Trump. Some people will paint you a racist, and on the other edge of the coin, if you say, I don't like this about Trump, then people will go the other extreme and they'll say, well, you know what, then you must be un-American. You don't love this country. So, the Colin Kaepernick thing being a great example of that. There's no discussion on things, and we want to be there to be a voice to basically add some reasonable discussion, to listen to each other's points of views, to sort of see through all of the murkiness in some of these situations and have people on who have different can see things from a different context and try to generate conversation, because all this infighting and outfighting and outgroup and in-group bias that's going on these days, it can be, Gerald, it drives you nuts. Even this net neutrality thing, it became Republican. Republicans want it repealed, and Democrats are fighting for it. Even though I think that the numbers didn't support that, but that's what you see
the
online.
overwhelming majority of people were against it, both Republican and Democrat, because ultimately, if you read between the fine print, it means more money out of our pocketbooks.
It does, and what people, I think, don't realize is that when you look at net neutrality, like let's take a company like Comcast and say Comcast right now, they can charge us to use their broadband, but they can't charge Facebook to feed into our broadband, so to speak. So as content producers like you and I, if they start telling us that we have to pay and we have to compete with Facebook, you and I are going to go, away for good. And that's a little bit troubling to me. Now, there's people who will take the opposite argument and say that we're going to be better off. I guess we're not going to know for a long time, but I don't pretend to have all of the answers. But that's something that I think we're going to talk about on this upcoming episode of Voice from the Underground when we record tomorrow night. But it's, again, that's just one of the things that we try to do, just to sort of try to make the world a little bit of a less confusing place, but have some fun while we're at it.
Definitely, indeed. Sounds like it's going to be a great show indeed. You can't afford to miss it. You want to check it out indeed. It is Voice from the Underground, and check out all their past episodes as well. Jasen Mummert, he's here along with his great co-host to provide you a great show indeed, with topics all over the map and opinions all over the map as well. And you definitely want to check it out when it hits the latest episode, and again, all the other episodes on Spreaker, also as well, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and so many other podcast outlets. Jasen,
absolutely, we'd love to have you on one of these days, Gerald.
You just might. I'd love to be on the show as well. It would be truly an honor indeed. But Jasen, it's just been great having you on here, talking a lot about the mouse and buying the fox, so to speak, and all the great things there, and also the things that concerned everybody as well. It's just been great hearing your thoughts on that, and my best to you and the Voice from the Underground, and hopefully
Thank you.
Be able to get on there real soon as well.
Hey, I appreciate it very much, Gerald.
All right, thanks so much, and truly it's been a great having you part of the pop culture cosmos.